The record's kind of rooted in that mysticism of Fires in the Fall being it's a poem, Robert Louis Stevenson, and I like that alliteration aspect, but it's supposed to bring to mind ancient traditions, like why is the fall and the wintertime something that we as humans have these, like Samhain and Yule and things. We've always gravitated towards these seasons, um, for a reason of like thinking the veil is thinner between the living and the dead, or, celebrating with family and like just taking that kind of feeling and feeling inspired during those months because that's when I'm most inspired to write. And, why is that? And in having that related to our artwork and the cover and the song titles and everything about it, that was the entire point, was the overall aesthetic to work together like that.
Greetings, mates. Welcome to episode 175 of Into the Necrosphere. The march to episode 200 continues, and this week I am continuing that march with Justin Coleman of Krigsgrav. He came on the podcast to talk about their fantastic new record, Fires in the Fall. I debuted the first single off of that record, for those of you who will recall, a couple of weeks ago, to some critical acclaim from the legions, and so naturally I had to get Justin on the podcast to talk about the record. We also spoke about what life was like for him growing up in Texas, how he got into metal, our shared appreciation for Type O Negative, and much more. Before we get to that conversation, however, Hyrgal are a black metal band out of France whose music I showcased on the podcast back in 2021, I believe. I absolutely loved the record they put out then. They have just dropped a new EP, which is absolutely crushing, and so naturally, the legions need to get a little taste. This is a track off of their new EP. It's a song called Epic Spleen. You just got your ears scrubbed out by A Peak Spleen, a track by Hyrgal, a black metal band out of France. They have just dropped their fantastic new EP, Session Funéraire Anno 2023, on Les Acteurs de l'Ombre's production. Fantastic EP. A absolutely awesome band, and if you want to buy yourself any of their music, I will post the link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. Head over there, and if you do purchase anything, then do let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. My friends, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I hope you guys enjoy the next 2.5 hours. If the spirit moves you to do so, please hit the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Leave me a review, share it with a friend, foist it on an enemy. Thank you very, very much to folks who are helping me get that Spotify review counter ticking up. Like I said, the target is 100 reviews, which I think will contribute significantly to our positioning in the algorithm. And we're fast starting to make progress. I think by the time I'm recording this, we're about 26 away. So if you guys could continue to do that, it is a massive help to the show. The more prominent the show features within these algorithms, the easier it is for me to get guests. Speaking of guests, next week I'm going to be talking with Dragliwin of the band Tudor. Most of you guys should be very, very familiar with the band. I was originally going to be talking to Nach, but unfortunately he had a prior commitment, so Dragliwin and I had a interesting conversation. I will be honest, he's not the most chatty of characters, but a very nice guy, and obviously Tudor is an absolutely stunning band, so that's going to be coming your way next week. But later on in this show, I will be reviewing the new Sól Án Varma record. A lot of hype around this one, and I will tell you whether or not I believe that the hype is justified. And then later on in the podcast, another installment of my weekly news rant where I give you my first impressions of some of the latest singles being dropped all over the show. And we also get into a couple of spicier topics. If you have not already done so, it is time for you right now to pledge allegiance to my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. I mean, of course, Brandon Legion, who brings you interviews with horror filmmakers, writers, directors, producers, every Monday with his podcast, Horrible 666. I am on tap every Tuesday with Into the Necrosphere, and every Wednesday, Mike Hill, the sensei Mike Hill, brings you Everything Went Black, his long-running podcast, which is a sinister smorgasbord that could include everything from speaking to fellow musicians through to artists, writers. He's had Josh Barnett of the UFC on there. And every Thursday, Mike returns with probably my favorite podcast of the week, Necromaniacs. That is a horror movie review show, and they talk about new movies, old movies, alongside his co-hosts, Mike Scandado and Jeff Kashid. Always entertaining, always a lot of fun. Make sure that you listen to that one if you're not already doing so. And then also make sure that after you've had your little rest on a Friday and a Saturday, you are back on a Sunday for the arcane, the weird, and the esoteric with the Reverend Carl Haikara on his weekly podcast, Soul Knox. He's just had Naz Alchemeth of Ecclesiastes on there for a really fascinating conversation. So do make sure that you check that out. And thank you very, very much to everybody who continues to support both this show and the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Really exciting, this community that we've kind of grown around this. And I've said it many times before, but I am very grateful for the opportunity that I have, not only to entertain you guys week in and week out, but to share a platform with a group of men who I respect and whose company and friendship I value greatly. Right now, my friends, I am going to sit back and let you enjoy the next hour or so in the company of myself and Justin Coleman of Krigsgrav. So I was commenting on your T-shirt right before we hit record, and again, I must say, very, very nice. Every time or every year around this time, obviously because this was around the time that Pete passed away, I do get extremely nostalgic about Typo Negative, and obviously I played them a couple of episodes ago. But I've just been absolutely gorging on the Typo Negative back catalog. World Coming Down, excuse me, I'm not on the verge of crying, by the way. I think I've picked up like a bout of sinusitis. So I keep on coughing, and my voice is really, really hoarse. So yeah, anyway, just so you know, I'm not, I like the new Krigsgrav, but I'm not that emotional. So.
No, it's fair. That's fine.
But yeah, first Typo Negative record. Bloody Kisses, World Coming Down, and Dead Again. Jesus, man, what? Oh, and actually, Life is Killing Me as well. But what? It astounds me how good that band's back catalog is, and just how absolutely fantastic it still sounds to this day. I mean, there's not a single moment in their entire catalog to me that sounds dated whatsoever.
No, it's funny you bring that up, and I kind of wore this because I knew you wore a typo shirt last episode, so I wanted to keep the continuity going. But also, I made like a playlist of typo last week because I'm going through that same thing. Because you see the posts, like R.I.P. Pete. It's been so many years, and typo is I say a top 5 band, but maybe a top 3 band for me. And it's just weird, like those records. There's so much to mine out of them still. Like when I go back and I'm listening to songs from like Dead Again or Life is Killing Me. I mean, you forget the little nuance of stuff or like how good certain songs are, because it's like when Dead Again came out, I kind of brushed it off, and I feel a little guilty for it. But you also feel like Pete Still's going to be around forever when it came out because he wasn't deceased yet. And I was like, I don't know about this, but it almost. I was thinking about this on the drive home the other day. Typo negative, I think, becomes more important to you as you get older. Like I can identify with the lyrics so much more on like World Coming Down and the later records now as because I'm 41, like real life shit starts to happen, and you kind of like it just makes more sense now. So it's like even more profound than when I initially listened to it when it came out.
Yeah, I think there's you have a pretty good point there. About it becoming more meaningful to you as you grow older. I had that dismissive attitude for some bizarre reason, and I've never in as I've reflected on it, I've never quite been able to figure out why. But I had that dismissive attitude of Life is Killing Me, and I only ended up picking that record up about 2 years after it came out, and then when I properly got stuck into it, I was like, this is absolutely incredible. Where for Dead Again, I was primed for that album. I mean, I got that album, I got that record the day that it came out, and I remember just being absolutely blown away. I was like, this is like they're going back to some of the old stuff, but equally retaining the best of the the melodic stuff, and it's just prime typo negative.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really does combine their earliest stuff with the later stuff they do perfectly. I don't think I was ready for it when it came out. My headspace wasn't like right for it because World Coming Down's probably my favorite if I had to pick, but that and like October Rust, they fight for it all the time for my top spot. So it just depends on my mood.
It's also very much a mood band. Like October Rust is a record where it's always the one that I'll mention last. But then sometimes I'll go back and listen to it, and I'm like, why do I think I don't like this album as much as the others? Like, of course I love it as much as the others. It's fucking brilliant.
It's a little bit more romantic though, and that's again like I don't those feelings of like the young man kind of thing are more with that record, and the newer stuff for like World Coming Down Beyond is like that kind of cold hard reality of like dealing with life that I think you deal with more now. So I don't know. Have you read the book that Jeff Wagner wrote?
No.
Yeah, he wrote Soul on Fire.
Oh
I
shit!
think they repressed it.
I was about to say, I'm sure I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
It's so good. I think they have repressed copies now. And I think he also wrote something on Voivod. But if you haven't read it, it's worth like an every year read around like October time, and it just really goes into Pete Still. Like they talk to his sisters, and it's a really good book, man.
What like was there anything in the book that you learned that you were surprised by?
It just kind of exposes who he was, flaws and all. I don't want to say exposes is the right word. It just expands on like who he was beyond the stage and the recordings, and kind of the more human side of him. Again, better or worse, and it just makes you really appreciate what he did and wish that you still had him here, and he could have battled his demons a little bit better. It's a really nostalgic book, and honestly, when you finish it, you just kind of feel like you feel sad, I guess, for better word.
Yeah. I was like that when I finished with the Mark Lanigan audiobook. I was like, Mark Lanigan's music I like generally, but you feel so not despondent is maybe not the right word, but you think to yourself, this guy had so much more he could have done. And I mean, Pete, it's certainly true of him. I mean, imagine the music that he would have been making right now.
Oh man, I it would be amazing, I'm sure.
100%. And the thing is, it's not just him; it's everyone in the band was just in peak form all the time. Like if you saw them play live, the interplay between between Kenny and between Pete, for example, on their vocals, just unfucking real. I mean, they could even take a song like Black Number One that you've heard, 100 times over, and just the way it kicks in when Kenny does his bit of the song, and then Pete comes back in. It's absolute magic. I mean, that's it. Magic is the best way to describe it.
I think so. I feel really fortunate. I saw him a couple times on the World Coming Down tour, and it was like during the fall time, and it was just so good because it was like they had the backdrop and everything, and the interplay between them because nothing sounded like it did on record. It took on a whole new life.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. That there will never be another band like them. And
No.
fun fact, I actually discovered this podcast because I was looking up interviews. I found the one with Johnny Kelly you did, and that's kind of what keyed me into the Necrosphere.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very
Yep.
cool. I was actually going to ask whether you had checked out the Johnny Kelly episode, because it was so much fun to do that, and I'm such a massive Johnny Kelly fan anyway. But yeah, I was going to ask whether you checked that out.
Yep. It keyed me into that, and then I looked and I saw that you interviewed Jason from Acre Cocky, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to like this podcast because I absolutely love both bands. So I knew it was the right choice.
Yeah, so Akrakaka is another band that to me is like that's top band, like at their peak. The last record I didn't care for quite as much, but the Goat of Mendes, Corazon, and Words That Go Unspoken trilogy, and I would probably put Antichrist in there as well, because I think even though Antichrist has a couple of maybe weaker moments when it's peaking, when there's those Matt Wilcock riffs, it is just genius, absolute genius. But those three records that I just mentioned now, Mendes, Goat, Corazon, and Words, I don't think in extreme music there's been anything that comes close.
No question. Words I love Antichrist. Actually, those four for me, I love them top to bottom. They're so good. And again, I feel kind of like a dumbass because I got to see them in Dallas at one point, and I bought them all a round of beers, and all I thought to say was "Hell, Satan, give them beers," and, like not actually have a good conversation. But I didn't. That was a long time ago. So
well, so I met the first time I ever met Jason was at a show. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 2008 or 2007 or 2008. At Coco's in London, and I remember being extraordinarily intimidated by the dude. Like he had this really like penetrating stare that he glared at you with. There was like a persona, and I think also because of all the stuff going on about them in the press, I was very intimidated by the guy. But I actually beyond that ended up talking to him back and forth, and I've spent a couple of nights visiting with him, and we've had barbecues together and stuff. So I got to know him reasonably well, and yeah, he's a very different guy on stage to what he is in person, kind of like most people. There's not a lot of folks that I've met in this scene, and this will probably be episode 175. In 175 episodes, I don't think I've come across a single person where I could go, with the exception of Gol, what you see on stage is exactly what that dude is like off stage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's representing Acre Cocky in the material live. You can't be Dad Jason and
No,
the mouthpiece of Satan to thousands of people.
definitely not. Excuse me. So, I mean, exciting times for you guys, because Krigsgrav is just about to drop Fires in the Fall. And I mean, first of all, thank you very much for letting me premiere the single, because I mean, the thing that I've always said, I've mentioned many times before on the podcast, what I've always wanted to achieve with this podcast is I've wanted to be in a position at some point, and hopefully I'm getting there, where I can help move the needle for bands, whether that's, you know, getting them, you know, at least communicating out their music to a wider audience, you know, maybe contributing to a couple of Bandcamp sales, whatever the case may be. But I really like the Sundering. And so, you know, I always felt like that record, because I'd kind of discovered it the year that it came out. I discovered it towards the back end of the year when all my, you know, my best of lists and stuff was done. And obviously, again, in hindsight, I've vowed never to do it at the end of the year again. But yeah, so when this new one came out and we started talking, I was very chuffed that you offered to let me premiere the single.
I appreciate you doing that. You know, I was worried, honestly, because I know we've spoken a little bit online, but I didn't know how you'd feel about it because, you know, you're nervous about your own work and people can be critical. But I was really excited about the opportunity to do so because I love this show. I feel like you do present like I used to love reading Metal Maniacs and Terrorizer and stuff, and that's what this show represents in podcast form to me. Now that those things no longer really exist, and you know, to have you do that, I mean, we really appreciate it, and I think it's an awesome forum and platform, and hope that the people that heard it really enjoyed it.
Well, I'd say definitely Metal Maniacs is like, you know, when I was growing up, it was absolutely the biggest influence for me, like the best way to discover stuff. And there was always like a real, to a degree with Terrorizer, it was the same, but it was even more so with Metal Maniacs, because Metal Maniacs had like a really gritty. There was something that felt very gritty and greasy about the magazine, you know. Like I think it was like some of the when quite a lot of the pages were in black and white and stuff, so it almost felt like it had like a zine quality to it.
Yeah,
But it was so exciting because, you know, you would turn the pages and there'd be like one bunch of crazy looking motherfuckers after the next. And
yeah.
like I remember seeing pictures of Apsu, pictures of Immortal, you know, pictures of Mayhem and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, even I remember seeing Cradle of Filth in there, thinking like this was in, you know, Principle of Evil Made Flesh days, and think to myself, these are the most whack people alive. But you know, I have to check out their music. But yeah, so it's funny you mentioned Metal Maniacs, because I do think the writing and the style and maybe the attitude of that has rubbed off on me, certainly as a fan, and maybe that comes out on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it does. And I still have some old issues and I'll go back and read them. And they just like, some of those writers gave no fucks. Like they just went ape shit on their reviews or their interviews and asked, like, there's one interview to do with like obeisance from Texas. And they just talk about crazy shit like all you can eat sausage buffets and going to prison and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's what I want to hear about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as I've said, you know, I come into the conversation with very little by way of preparation. I want it to be a conversation whereby it's, you know, it's the same as if you and I sat down and we drank a beer and, you know, we were chopping it up. We'd listen to similar kind of music. I'm reasonably confident we'd find things based around that, you know, elsewhere outside of music that we have in common as well. And that's where I always feel like that's where the magic comes from. You know, so no, I take that as a very, very big compliment. So where did the journey begin for you? Like where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Dallas area, like Oak Cliff. It's like kind of a suburb of Dallas. Um, so there and kind of stayed in that area because it's a really large metroplex. So there's like Dallas, Fort Worth, but Fort Worth isn't, it's like an hour and a half away from Dallas. So I grew up in Dallas and then like North Dallas, Plano area, up through really till I was mid 20s and then moved down to Central Texas with my wife and at the time our son. Now that was a little while ago, so about 15 years ago. But yeah, I grew up in the Dallas area. Um, it was an interesting place. It's really hot a lot of the time.
It's,
So
I have heard that. So where I work, we've got offices in Dallas, and I've been, you know, they've spoken to me in the past about potentially moving to the States and, basing myself out of Houston or Dallas. And I've looked into it, and I'm definitely not averse to the idea. But one thing everybody has told me is, like, if you come to Houston or you come to Dallas, it's fucking boiling.
Oh, it's the summertime. I mean, you're dealing with fuck 100-degree days for 30 days on end sometimes, like 100 to 107 degrees. And it gets oppressive. Like,
Mm.
I've never been in a true real winter, but I imagine it's got, it's kind of like that just it fries you. It's pretty awful.
Yeah. Well, what is it like, or what was it like in the area that you were growing up in? I mean, you're roughly the same age as me. Well, what was kind of I guess the youth culture and the culture in school like, growing up, and how much did you participate in that, or did you always kind of feel like a bit of a loner, or somebody who was kind of on the outside looking in?
Definitely that. I've always kind of felt different. So to kind of go back a little bit, I grew up when I was younger. My dad would play a lot of records, a lot of Southern rock records and stuff like Leonard Skinner, Molly Hatchet, Blackfoot, and then like Scorpions, AC/DC. And I always felt like, because I'd get to stay up with the adults if I was good. So
Mm.
I'd sit in front of the stereo, which he always turned on loud, because him and my uncle would be like drinking whiskey and hanging out and stuff. So they're like, hey, if you just stay over here, and play with your toy guitar and stuff and be good, you can stay up. So I remember, I'd just stare at these records, which the Molly Hatchet stuff always had like Frank Frazetta artwork on it. And at a young age, super into it. It just drew me in. Um, and then it was like I grew up. I knew I had an affinity for like rock music and stuff, and I'd say I had a normal childhood. But then as you get older, like, and I'm sure you remember this, like grunge was kind of a thing, and I
Mm.
tried to like it because that's what was. It didn't stick with me. Like there was some stuff like Alice in Chains that I was like, okay, I kind of get this, but it didn't really matter. It was just kind of there. Um, so for me, it was like I never had a sense of placement or purpose. Like I didn't really play sports. I did, but I didn't like it. But then my friend, he showed me he got is. I mean, this is like the story for everybody, I think. But we were in seventh or eighth grade, and I was kind of just like that weirdo kid that liked playing magic cards and reading comic books and stuff. And he showed me Master of Puppets, and I mean, I can remember like that very day, that instant, like it brings me back because it was it's like what I would call as close to a spiritual awakening.
Mm.
Is I think you can get. That's my interpretation of it. Like it changed my life. I didn't have like from there on, I knew like this was me. Like this is what I'd been looking for. And that sounds really fucking corny, um, to a
No,
degree.
dude, I don't think so at all. I think anybody that's truly into this music, they will pinpoint the exact moment that they discovered that this was the music for them. There's that saying about, you don't choose art chooses you. And I think that when it comes to metal, there's two types of people, as I've said on the podcast before. There's the people that come into the scene because the scene is reasonably accepting, and maybe they're also a bit socially awkward and not hugely accepted. They don't feel like they belong anywhere, so they fall in line with the metal folk at their school because that's just where they feel like they're not going to get singled out. But generally speaking, for them it's a phase, and it wears off. But for those of us who are diehards, and have been into this, and genuinely feel like you're going to be into this for life. I just think I think that when the moment comes that you hear that first song, or you have that first experience, it is literally like you are discovering a limb that you didn't realize you have, or something it just feels like there's like a missing part of you, and you finally discovered it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely it. Because I mean, it was like a switch was flipped in my brain, and I knew I needed more of it, and I needed to learn everything about it. Like I needed to know who recorded it, the lyrics, what went into the songs, what did they listen to? Like it was just like how do you play it? That's what got me into guitar. I was like, okay, now I want to try and make this kind of noise, and it started there. But once your eyes are open to it, that's where you start to expand and you look for other things. And, like instantly living in Dallas, it was like Pantera. Because Far Beyond Driven was hitting hard. It was the mid '90s, and that was
Yeah.
in Dallas, that was really, it was an easy pickup and it made tons of sense. And, it's still fucking awesome. I don't give a shit what people think.
Dude,
Again,
I absolutely fucking love that album. I think it will to my dying day be, there's a couple of records that nursed me through high school. Vulgar Display of Power is one, and Far Beyond Driven in particular. I mean, like songs like, when you go through the standard ups and downs of a teenage boy, at least a teenage boy when we were growing up, girlfriend, you and the girlfriend break up, bullies at school. There's a song for almost every occasion that Pantera wrote on those two records. You're having issues with the bullies, you got to live in a hole. You're blasting that. If you're having issues with a girlfriend, shedding skin. It's like, yeah, Phil, I know you feel what I felt. It's like it was. I mean, I again, I like most of what Pantera did, but those two records were just pure magic.
yeah, and I feel it's a good time to have been a Pantera fan because, again, as you know, when you're your youth and you had Vulgar Display of Power and Far Beyond Driven, like, holy shit, man, it doesn't get much better than that. And that was in its prime. Like, so again, yeah, it just kind of went from there. And we had a record shop in town called Bone Daddies. And that's where I got into the more extreme side of stuff, really. It's closed down now, but I used to walk up there with friends, and it was a pretty fucking far hike, but it was worth it. And that's where they sold, back when this was an import thing, like Immortal and Cradle of Filth and Terrorizers and Dark Throne and stuff. And now it doesn't seem like it's hard to get, but then it was pretty fucking tough to get.
Yeah. I fucking hell, excuse me. If to anybody who's listening to this is wondering whether I'm on my deathbed, no, I'm not. But one question I was going to ask you, because you obviously kind of came in around about the same angle that I did. I mean, my discovery was AC/DC, and then AC/DC led to Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and then we went on from there. But did you go through a period prior to discovering the more extreme stuff where a lot of it just sounded like a bunch of noise to you? Because I remember when I was already properly into Metallica and into Slayer and even maybe Sepultura, I remember I would hear stuff like Cannibal Corpse, and I would hear things like Obituary, and I would go, fuck, this is sort of bullshit. This just sounds like a racket. These guys don't know how to play their instruments. I do think, actually, and this is what got me thinking about it, I think Far Beyond Driven was a very critical bridge to take you into that more extreme stuff. Because even though, I mean, maybe folks will disagree with me on this, but even though perhaps on paper something like Arise, is a heavier record and a record that's closer to being traditional death metal than Far Beyond Driven, there's an extremity to Far Beyond Driven, like a sonic abrasiveness to it, that I feel warmed my ears a lot more to accepting death metal and especially black metal. Like, I think that was kind of one of the big gateways for me to cross the divide.
I think so. I think the sonic, like when you listen to the production of, like, say, Arise, because Sepultura was kind of the other band. It's like Arise is a little more tempered, I think, whereas Far Beyond Driven is very loud. It's very abrasive. It has dime bags, like that solid state amp sound that's just like, it's really fucking in your face. And then just the way that's mixed and mastered, like you take a song like Slaughtered, it's very, very heavy in a different way. So I can see what you mean, and I agree with that.
There's something
have some
also,
guys.
Apologies for the interruption. There's something especially about Slaughtered that is incredibly convincing, like convincingly violent. And I've seen, so, one of the moronic things that I used to do when I was a kid was I was about grade 10, 11. I would go to school dances, and we would convince the DJ to play one of our songs. And so he's playing dance nonsense, and people are having a great time. And then we finally get him to play Slaughtered, or we get him to play Use My Third Arm, and it is just complete and utter bedlam. Because we're headbanging and moshing, and there's a wall of death into all the normal people. So it did get to a point where I was obviously banned from all school dances from there on out. But Slaughtered is just there's something that's so. I'll always have, whenever I think of Slaughtered, I'll have memories of those school dances. But there is something that even when I listen to it today, it's like, this is one of the most pissed off, violent, completely and utterly unhinged songs that I've ever heard of that I've ever listened to in my entire life. That last bit with where Phil's going do sin, and Vinny's doing those triplets, and Dime is just grooving away on the guitar. It's genius.
Yeah, and that shit was the #1 record. Like, that's insane.
Which is what I was about to say, which is so nuts. It was a massive album.
Yeah. It's man, again, it's easy to reminisce about that, because that was, and maybe things will. I don't know if you're ever going to have a record with that kind of extremity do that again.
No, I don't think so.
I'll put
have you seen the new generation? There's no fucking way they're gonna like anything that's that heavy.
Yeah, not on that level.
No.
And that was always the goal when you're a kid, right? Is when you're at a social gathering, is to get them to play your CD or a song off your CD, so it pisses everyone off.
So we would go to the CD store and steal like the inside sleeve of like a dance compilation or something like that, and slip it into our CD case. And then obviously the DJ it's dark. He doesn't know what's going on. You just go, play track 4 for this one, and he'll look at the CD cover, and it'll be like, Dance Mega Mix Volume 27 garbage, Ibiza, club hits, and he puts on track number 7, and it's like, Slaughtered starts playing.
Oh
yeah. And it's like that's our cue to get going. But what a fucking record. Just everything about it as well, like from the album cover with the drill going into the guy's head. It was just like, it was such an abrasive fuck you to everybody when they put that album out. And as we just said now, what a trip that it was, as popular as it ended up being.
Yeah, when you have stuff like Good Friends and a Bottle of Pills and it's on the #1 record, that's fucking weird, man. It's just fucking weird.
No, big time. But yeah, so you were talking about getting into the more extreme stuff. What was your first taste of proper extreme music?
I'm glad you brought me back around to that, because I can get sidetracked super easy. So I remember, not at the CD store I was talking about, Bone Daddies. I went to another one, and I was a long hair. So long hairs, they see you. So there's a dude that worked there, and he's like, "Hey, you should listen to this." And I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And it was Obituaries, The Incomplete, and Deicide's Serpents of the Light. And I was playing guitar at this point in time, so I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And I listened to it in store, and I was like, "Okay, I like the guitars," but then the vocals kicked in, and I was like, "I don't like this shit. I don't get it," especially Obituary, because it's John Tardy, and I wasn't ready for John Tardy.
No.
But I didn't like it. It was too abrasive, and I wasn't ready. I should say I liked the guitar, like that it was, it was doing something intricate, and that was something that I could kind of get into. So I could glean a little bit of interest off of it, but I absolutely hated the vocals. I couldn't do it. I was like, this is too much for me right now.
No, so it's funny you mentioned The Incomplete, because that was my first proper death metal record that I owned and listened to, from start to finish. But I think by that point I'd been properly conditioned into accepting more extreme music, because to me, when I heard it, like from the second that you hear I'm in Pain, and that first opening, it's that just crazy riff, and then it's that opening growl, and it's like, oh my God, this is good. And then for me, from there, it was Morbid Angel's Covenant. And then this is how I actually met my best friend. I got a call from out of the blue from this dude on my 15th birthday, and he's like, I've got a CD here that I heard you want to buy. And I was, he was talking about the first Deicide album, and I was like, oh, okay, well, come and hang out at the house, and I'll pay you for the CD. And he came over. I said, listen, it's my birthday today, and we've got some people here just chilling out. We're gonna have a barbecue in a little bit. You're welcome to stay if you want. He ended up staying. He and I ended up doing most of the talking that day. And I ignored most of my other friends. But it was those three records were the big strides forward as far as like more extreme stuff was concerned.
Yeah, the one that really broke through to me, and this is a record you love. It's Cradle of Filth, Cruelty and the Beast. I know that's on your top 10 of all time, so that's okay. But,
I don't mind Cruelty and the Beast. I think Cruelty and the Beast, of all the Cradle of Filth records, if you had to force me at gunpoint to listen to a Cradle of Filth record for one for the rest of my life, that would be the one I choose. It at least has Desire in Violent Overture, which is a fucking great song.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's funny you bring that up, because I brought that to my guitar teacher at the time. And this was the first extreme CD I brought him. We'd been doing, Metallica and Pantera and stuff like that, Sepultura. And so I brought him this, and I was like, I want to learn how to play Desire and Violent Overture. And that was the exact song. And he played it for like 15 seconds, and he stopped it, and he's just like, I don't think I can teach you this. I don't like this. Because he was an old blues guy, and I was like, okay, I think our lessons are coming to an end. I'm going to have to figure this shit out on my own.
What did he make of Pantera and Metallica?
He was okay with it. They were big enough, I think, to where he had exposure to them. In Dimebag's licks, a lot of those are very blues oriented, because we were going over like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix stuff. So he could relate that to what I wanted to learn from like Dimebag. Or the Metallica stuff was relatively non-abrasive to some degree. So, it wasn't too bad. But introducing Cruelty and the Beast, it didn't work out the same way for him. He didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I would. And as you were talking now about the guitar and Cruelty and the Beast, that again stands out to me as, at least to my memory or my limited view of Cradle of Filth, because it was shortly after that I kind of went off of the band. But that's the most kind of riffy record that they did. And Desire and Violent Overture is a great example of subtlety and dynamics working unbelievably effectively. Like the Desire and Violent Overture chorus, you literally just have the guitar going duh, 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 duh. It's like it's taking that really simplistic approach, but making it unbelievably impactful. It's a great record to learn from, I think, if you're a young guitarist.
I took a lot of ideas from that and Dusk and Her Embrace, as far as like harmonies and things like that, how to play with harmonies on the guitar. Because I think they wrote some of their best guitar harmonies on those two records, like melody wise. They're really like Stuart and John. They did a really good job on those two records. So I'd agree.
But yeah, so saying goodbye to the guitar teacher then, and then from Cradle of Filth, what was the advancement from there?
That's it. It was that was the more extreme stuff, if you want to call it that. Like, I guess it was Demu's first record, For All Tid, The Emperor, Wrath of the Tyrants. I think it had something else on it too. It was like a weird CD when I bought it, because they used to sell like CDRs and shit like that too. But you just bought whatever you could get your hands on. And I bought a Dark Throne tribute called Dark Throne, Holy Dark Throne. And that was really the first kind of trip into that. And it expanded from there, because I bought a magazine. It was a Pit magazine. I don't know if you remember that magazine.
Yeah.
And it had a sampler CD, and it was just like Witchery and a bunch of other shit. And it was just that opened the floodgates. So I just started investigating every single band that I could. But it was really rooted in black metal. I liked black metal from jump more than death metal. And I got into death metal kind of later.
Oh, really? Well, that's very interesting. Because black metal to me, it was, again, it took a while for me to get to kind of warm to it. It was hearing, excuse me, It was hearing To Eve, The Art of Witchcraft by Cradle of Filth that kind of
Okay.
started to pique my interest in it. But then when I heard Emperor properly for the first time, Emperor, Burzum, those were the two bands that really kind of tipped me over. And at the recommendation of Metal Maniacs, I got Ceremony of Opposites by Samael. And I got, what else did I get? Wolfheart by Moonspell. That's not really a black metal album, but it's close enough.
It's a great record.
Oh, it's fucking brilliant. But yeah, but Ceremony of Opposites as well. Genius record. But yeah, I got a bunch of stuff that way. But you mentioned Dark Throne, Holy Dark Throne. I mean, there was a who's who of killer bands on there. I mean, you had Satyricon, Enslaved, Thorns, Emperor, Dodheim's God, Gehenna, Gorgoroth, Immortal. I mean, it was like, if you added Mayhem into that, it's the fucking and Dark Throne. It's basically the Norwegian black metal Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was really interesting because even though they were playing Dark Throne songs, it was through their sonic palette, so you kind of got to hear what they were bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. And I think I may be wrong, but I feel like there was a secret song on there too. I think. And I believe it was something that Immortal did. It was at the very end of the CD. Maybe I'm not remembering that correctly.
Yeah, they
there
did
was some.
to walk the infernal fields, and that was a
Okay.
hidden track. So there were 7 tracks on the record, and then
Okay,
track
yeah.
8 was the hidden song, and that was Immortal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another record that I've spoken about many times. Where that was like, one, it had a massive influence on me, but when I heard it, it was like, this is the next piece in the puzzle, and that's Battles in the North.
Yeah. Yeah. Immortal's early stuff. I mean, honestly, everything they did, even Blizzard Beast, which was a little weird, it's still really fucking good.
It's a cool album.
Yeah, Damned in Black was kind of a departure for me, but everything else I love.
Yeah, no, I would strongly agree with that. So, at what or how old were you when you started Krigsgrav, or when you started actively playing music?
So actively playing music, shit, probably 15. And that was just kind of playing with local guys in the area, local bands. And you would just at that point in time gravitate towards anyone wearing a heavy metal shirt at school and try to form a band. And that's what we did. We played kind of like crappy thrash metal. We would cover like the Misfits, and we covered Sepultura's Troops of Doom. So we thought we were pretty fucking cool at the time.
which is a great song, I have to say.
Yeah. Schizophrenia is a huge record for me too. I think it doesn't get enough love. I know Beneath the Remains is a big deal, but anyway.
Did you see that news, by the way, about them re-recording the first 2 records?
Yeah.
Morbid Visions and what was it, Bestial? You wanted to say
Devastation.
Bestial. I was about to say, for some reason I was about to say Bestial Warlust, but that's a band. But yeah, what did you see that news?
I did, and I think they're touring on it too.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that Max is going back and kind of revisiting his past like that and showing a new generation, like especially the old shit.
Mm-hmm. It did make me wonder whether they would give Schizophrenia another crack as well.
Because that's hope so.
I was about to say, because that's kind of, if you think about it, I mean, they've toured Beneath the Remains and Arise. I don't necessarily think there's any merit in re-recording either of those two, but I do feel like, out of the Sepultura canon, maybe Schizophrenia doesn't quite get the love that it should get. And so I feel that might be, depending on how these 2 re-recordings go, that might be a candidate for re-recording as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I would absolutely love that. The songs on it are good. I mean, they're just as good as the stuff on Arise and Beneath the Remains. It's just the production's a little weird. It's weird now. It's not weird to me. I've listened to it a lot, but if you like listen to it compared to modern production, it's definitely a little thin. But going back to playing in bands, you did the thing through high school, and then my brother and I formed black metal bands in the early 2000s. We played in for a long time, called Dagon. He played drums and I did guitar, and we released a couple records. And then I played with some guys in some other projects that just, stuff worked, stuff didn't. and ultimately kind of led to me playing with David, he started Krigsgrav. So he started Krigsgrav in 2004 as kind of like a solo thing. And we played in a band called Ballsguard together around a little bit after that, 2005. And, we kind of linked up and worked together in Krigsgrav in 2012 is when we finally kind of made it a collaborative thing.
I'd never heard of Dagon before, and I'm just looking at it right now on Metal Encyclopedia. It looks like my kind of vibe, just based on the fact that both records are long. The names sound fucking cool. I see. There's a picture of you in corpse paint on the Metal Encyclopedia entry. What led to that band's or that project's coming to an end?
My brother moved. He moved to Colorado because the core nexus of the band was him and I. And he decided he wanted to do something different with his life, and I totally get it. We didn't end it immediately. It was like, well, let's see what happens. We'll see how it goes. And from there it just it ran its course, and we put out a couple records and an EP, and we never formally said we're done with it. It's just done, I guess. But I really look back on those times fondly because we did what I think and wanted to set out to do. We put out some records. We had a lot of peer contact with guys in like Antaeus. We toured with Demon Sea and Crimson Moon and in Nightbringer and stuff like that. So I felt like a real part of that American black metal scene at the time, and it was really exciting. And then when we were done, and it was time to move on. So.
And then 2012 is when Krigsgrav became like a full-time concern, and you guys have kind of been trucking along all the way up now to Fires in the Fall, which is your 5th album, if I'm not mistaken, or 6th,
7th.
Jesus.
Yeah, number 7.
Yeah. And I mean, tell me a little bit about the approach to this record and your thinking coming out of the Sundering. I mean, the Sundering was a record you guys put out during the craziness of COVID, and then this one obviously is is kind of us coming into the new normal. Does when you write your creative process, does it get impacted at all by anything going on externally, or do you tend to be quite insular when it comes to writing music?
I think writing music, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I'm not impacted by things externally. I think that manifests more through the lyrical content and perhaps the themes of the albums themselves. But musically, it's definitely, it's pretty closed off. I try to write with a clear vision in mind or an idea in mind and not have that altered by external stuff or, like say, I want this to sound a certain way and not have that changed by, keeping it still core to Kriegsgrav's sound, but maybe adding some new elements to it. When I think about the writing process for Fires in the Fall, to me, it almost feels like a double album with the Sundering, just because we wrote it almost when the Sundering was still being released. We never stopped writing. So it just felt like, we were kind of all gas, no brakes at that point in time. So why stop it? But it's very different. Aesthetically and in production wise, we knew we wanted a bigger, more atmospheric kind of sound for this record. Because the Sundering was sort of like a reintroduction almost to the band, for our sound, I think.
The album also, in comparison to the Sundering, it definitely sounds a lot more focused to me. Like it feels like it has a much more there's kind of a cohesive spine running through the music, I feel. And that's not taking away from the Sundering, but again, this feels like a more kind of complete record. If you understand what I'm driving at, there's a more consistent feel to the album than there was on the Sundering.
No, I'd agree, and I think that's absolutely true. The Sundering was kind of like the three of us. It was Cody's first record with David and I. So it almost feels like a new band record to some degree. And it was figuring out how each of us write together and how we communicate, whereas this one, we already knew that. We had those relationships already formed from the Sundering. So we just rolled naturally into it and said, this is the vision that we want to achieve with Fires in the Fall. And we wrote to that. So it was more focused, and it was, especially musically, like meant to kind of be an A to B, like song 1 through 7. This is what it should do. So it was very purposeful in that intent for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I really like the album cover as well. There's kind of like I was curious to ask you about this because there's almost a bit of a kind of folk horror theme to it, and it looks quite unique if you think about a lot of stuff coming out nowadays. But I think the folk horror piece was the one that kind of, or that connection caught my eye most quickly. Where did that cover come from, and who did it for you? I'm assuming it was not Wes Ben Scooter that did it for you, because otherwise it would have looked like you've got Mickey Mouse standing in the middle of the fire over there.
No. It was the guy's name's Cameron Hinojosa. He's done artwork for us in the past. He was referred to me. My brothers used him. So my brother plays drums in Chemist, and they've used him for like shirt designs and stuff like that. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, who's an artist that you recommend?" And he sent me his stuff. And so we had a relationship with him again from the Sundering. And so I kind of presented this idea that, David and Cody and I had talked about for the cover, of having like this almost ritual going on, with these colors and this color scheme. And, and I had some pictures for just like concept idea, and I sent it to him. And I was like, can you do this? Could you work this in with these colors? And that's what he sent back. And I was like, that fucking nailed it. Like, because we wanted something that felt menacing, that felt almost, like something bad is about to occur. There's something in the woods. There's something like, this is the record coming. It's this mystique to it. And it's taking like that feeling, which I guess translates well, because that's exactly what it was trying to do, in like an almost ritualistic look to the cover.
I was about to say the word I think that you were looking for is ominous. There's definitely there's a sense of foreboding when you look at the cover, which it's one of the most unique and one of the most interesting covers I've seen for a while, and I think it captures the music on the record really well too.
Awesome. That was entirely the point of it, because it's, the record's kind of rooted in that mysticism of Fires in the Fall being, it's a poem, Robert Louis Stevenson, and I like that alliteration aspect, but it's supposed to bring to mind ancient traditions, like, why is the fall in the wintertime something that we as humans have these, like Samhain and Yule and things? We've always gravitated towards these seasons, for a reason of like thinking the veil is thinner between the living and the dead, or, celebrating with family, and like just taking that kind of feeling and feeling inspired during those months, because that's when I'm most inspired to write. Why is that? And in having that related to our artwork and the cover and the song titles and everything about it, that was the entire point, was the overall aesthetic to work together like that.
Yeah. And fall, obviously, in Dallas is like it's like piping hot summer in the UK. So, so I have actually always wondered about that, though. There is when it comes to US black metal, there's a very distinct feel to it, right? So if you listen to a band like Tombs or Cobalt or Absu, you listen to you guys, you can. I actually spoke to Michael about from Fredenstall about this too. There's a distinct USness about it. A lot of the bands that produce that style of black metal that I'm thinking about right now, they come from. I mean, I was about to say they come from places that are reasonably hot, but I mean, New York isn't hot. But I've often wondered where that, like what sparks that. Is it the weather? Is it, what I was about to say, is it the food? What is it? What is it that kind of gives American black metal that very distinctly American sound?
It's hard to say, because we're separated by so many miles. I think it's I think it's the desire to create something uniquely you in your sound and aesthetically as well. And I can say that going back to Dagon because that's what we tried to do when we did that. And with Krigsgrav, we take the same mentality where, I don't know, we know we take from different things, but it's trying to create, add those things to our own pot, make something uniquely us. And I think that's what every US black metal band is, striving to do, and most do very well. Um, just because you're separated by so many miles, but you want to represent your area as well as possible. But it's like, for example, Absu being a Texas band in us, we sound wildly different. Necrofire and us, we sound wildly different. Texas is really fucking big. So we're still separated by 4 or 5 hours. And so that's their interpretation of what they're trying to represent in North Texas and what our influences are in trying to bring that to our sound.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you have so much different cuisine across the country. This is also the thing that I've never been able to get about the music. Like you've managed to create this uniform sound, whereas not even your food is the same from state to state and from city to city. By the way, I would assume being based out of Texas, you must be a barbecue man, mate.
Yeah. Yep.
I was about to say, if you're about to say you're a vegan, then that's when I would hit leave studio and the conversation's over.
So I do eat vegetarian a lot.
What?
So, but I do love barbecue. So just bear with it.
You lift as well, though, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you find so let me ask you this question. What steered you down that diet path? So how often do you eat vegetarian?
I try to as much as possible. It really started for a health reason for me. I was having some stomach issues and things like that I felt awful all of the time. And it was something that I had to course correct.
In what sense? Like what were your symptoms?
Just upset stomach, frequent, like just that churning of your guts a lot. And anything that I ate it felt like sour on my stomach. And I had really bad acid reflux a lot and almost constantly, to where it was like, it wasn't enjoyable to eat. I felt like shit all the time. I didn't sleep well. And there's a multitude of factors that also go into this. But I realized, kind of changing my diet around seemed to make me feel better. It was a lot easier for me to like digest things, and my stomach seemed to feel better over a course of time. And I was like, well, fuck, I want to stick with this. I felt pretty good, and it didn't have any negative impacts
on the lifting and on anything like that. Because I was about to say, how did it impact your, like what you do in the gym, for example, or just generally, how you feel from an energy perspective?
I felt really good. I felt better than I had in my early 20s because I cleaned up my diet, and then I started lifting with a purpose. I got really into powerlifting. And so you just, with that and kind of I think the important thing is being conscious of taking care of yourself and not thinking you're taking care of yourself. You know what I mean? Because you can think you're doing it, but you might not be doing everything very well. So I really paid a lot of attention to putting everything together, and it just made me feel better. So that's kind of why I've stuck with it. But I can absolutely still enjoy some good barbecue, no doubt.
Well, I was about to say, when I come and visit, mate, we're not going to any vegetarian places. So.
No. I got you.
It is funny to me with food though, because I definitely find I'm a big fan of Stan Efferding and the stuff that he talks about around the vertical diet. And one of the things he says is your body becomes efficient at processing certain kinds of food. And that's why when he's training somebody, he tends to steer them towards eating the same food all the time, because your body's going to be most efficient at processing that food, and so therefore taking the nutrients out of the food. And I do think, just because I've grown up eating so much red meat, I just think, generally speaking, I feel completely off when I'm not eating. If I go a week where all I'm eating is chicken breast, I'm tired. I feel depleted. My weight goes down. Like the weights that I'm doing in the gym goes down. I just don't feel myself. If I go every single day where I'm eating a piece of steak every single day, I feel great. Weight's good. I sleep well. Acid reflux, that's something that I've struggled with in the past as well, but I found pepsin helps with that. And doing 10-minute walks 3 times a day helps for it as well, especially trying to time that walk after you've eaten. I'm also paranoid about getting esophageal cancer because I've heard that's a side effect of getting like constant acid reflux. But aside from that, I've not had anything negative happen with eating meat. I mean, that being said, I joke around an awful lot, but I think to each their own ultimately. And if you're feeling better from it, then that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's really what I just tell folks. Do whatever works best for you. Do what makes you feel
100%.
good. Because again, like I love to lift, I loved powerlifting, and I felt just as strong lifting with that diet than I had in the past. So actually, it was a great feeling to have, and I didn't feel like I lost any gains. I was making progress, and so whatever gets you to whatever goals you need to get at, do that. That's the most important thing.
So, how long have you been into powerlifting for?
Now probably like actually dedicated powerlifting. And I've taken a little break recently, but I was into it for 5 or 6 years, like actually dedicated, fully going for like numbers and trying to achieve like, 1,000 pounds total lifts across the board kind of thing. And then working from there. So I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years. I've taken a little break over the last few months, just to kind of let my muscles recoup a little bit and working more on, hypertrophy and stuff like that. But, I love powerlifting. I love the tenets of it. The 5-3-1 program, I think, is wonderful. Jim Windler, his stuff's great. I'm a results driven guy, and I like the fact that you can write it down and you can go and you can measure your success and you know where you're going every lifting session you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also what I wouldn't say I'm a full blown power lifter, but I've always incorporated a very big chunk of that into my workouts and into the way that I approach every workout, because I'm always thinking about, every single workout is either about adding volume or adding weight. And if I'm adding volume, it is so that later on I can add weight. Totally out of curiosity, but I did see some of your photos on Facebook, and you're a chunky young buck. So you're not chunky in a bad way, like you look pretty stacked. So what are your 1 rep maxes on deadlift, squat, and bench?
Deadlift's gotten a little weaker here lately, which I hate to say because I used to love deadlifting. It's probably 445 now, probably. I was hovering around 500, but it's probably dropped to about 445 to be reasonable.
Yeah.
My squat, you know how squat is. Squats, it's my weakest one, but it's probably 245, which it is what it is. I should be better at, but I'm not. I know. And bench is around 3. So if I'm pushing 305 bench, and I toss an overhead press, military press in there too, and that's probably around 175, something like that.
Yeah, so you absolutely mop the floor with me on overhead press, and on bench, and on deadlift around about the same. I think the most I ever did was 465. With squat, the most I've ever done is about 380 to 400.
That's great.
I was born with these fucking tree trunk legs, unfortunately, mate. Even when I was a thin, scrawny little kid at school, I had to buy like school trousers that were bigger for me because my thighs wouldn't fit in them otherwise.
You got them trunks, man.
If you look at the way South Africans are built generally, like look at the way the guys that play rugby for our national squad, look at the way that they're physically built. it's just we're just all like this. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is. It's like
I got chicken legs, man.
yeah,
They don't support a ton of weight, so the
yeah,
squats have
yeah.
always been really hard.
Have you competed?
I thought about it, but I never ended up doing it.
Yeah.
It's always been a personal thing for me. I kind of love and maybe that's very black metal, but I just love the individual challenge. And I thought about it a little bit, but I never put my hat in the ring. Maybe I'm a little too self-conscious. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't think I would ever consider competing in powerlifting, but I do feel a competition definitely does bring something out of you. Like when I've done Thai boxing fights and stuff like that, there is something about setting yourself that challenge. I would say if you've got some decent numbers there, I wouldn't feel self-conscious about it. I mean, my other question was going to be, at what point did you start using human growth hormone to get that 300 number on the bench?
uh, Unfortunately, that's none of that, but it was just repping out 225 a lot, and it sucks. It's a lot of
Yeah.
wear and tear in your shoulders.
You've seen the CT Fletcher thing where he talked about, I think he was talking about his chest workout, and it's like it's something like 10 reps at 225, and then 11, and then 12, and then 13, and then 14, and then 15. I think you go up to like 25, and then you get to take it all the way back down to 1. Yeah, I mean that he says you can only do it like once a month, but it completely utterly wrecks your chest.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fucking monster.
Yeah, well, he's a monster, but I mean, obviously he's had his heart ailments, which was pretty sad. But did you ever see that documentary that they did on him?
I didn't. Mm-mm.
There's Generation Iron. The guy, I think the company is called Generation Iron, and they did the Generation Iron documentaries, and then they did one specifically on CT. And he talks a lot about growing up and his really shitty relationship with his father, and he talks a lot about his some of the issues that he had with his health and stuff like that. But such a nice guy, and I found Generation Iron to be extraordinarily boring, but the CT Fletcher documentary I highly recommend. It's really touching, really moving, and equally, if you're ever feeling lazy one morning and you feel like I can't be bothered to get out of bed and go train, all you need to do is see 5 minutes of CT Fletcher, and you're behind the wheel of the car, going hoofing it to the gym.
His stuff, Jocko's stuff, David Goggins. I mean, you take any of those guys talking about getting your ass up and moving, and it's gonna happen. Like they know how to motivate for sure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm a big fan of Jocko as well, and I like David Goggins too. You saw David Goggins had this. He had a bit of an exchange recently with Dan Crenshaw.
I saw that today. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's I just caught the kind of back end of it, but do you know what the actual story is all about?
I don't. I kind of buzzed past it. It looked like maybe Crenshaw was on a show, or they were having a podcast discussion or something, and I don't know the exact exchange, but I think Goggins felt like he was lied to about something. I don't know exactly what it was though, from Crenshaw.
So it says here on SoftRep, so this is from the 8th of April. It says Goggins was upset that Crenshaw called him out for a lackluster SEAL career, and Crenshaw was upset for being called out by Goggins for contradicting himself and asking Goggins for a supportive quote to go on the back of Crenshaw's book.
Okay.
Yeah. I personally am not the biggest fan of Dan Crenshaw. I think he seems like a nice guy, but I follow I've also looked into a lot around which politicians are benefit most from the stock market. His name is right up there. He very much he strikes me very much as a uniparty politician, and I've got no time for people like that. So Dave Goggins, on the other hand, very big fan.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's what Dave Goggins was kind of getting at was, he's frustrated with a guy that he knows is just going to be benefiting from being a career politician potentially. So I get it.
calling him out over a supposedly mediocre Navy SEALs career.
Yeah, there's nothing mediocre about any of that.
I was about to say, if you make it into the Navy SEALs, that you're already not mediocre. Number one, but number
Yep.
two, does that mean that unless you've achieved the very highest station in whatever you're doing, you shouldn't be allowed to do anything outside of that? It's the fucking dumbest
Yeah,
logic I've ever heard in my life.
absolutely. It's stupid.
So, getting back to the Fires in the Fall record, that comes out in June. And by the way,
Mhm.
did I get the release date correct? No, I didn't. I'll have to correct that. So it's not June 30th; it's June 23rd. When I was
It's June
recording
23rd.
that, I knew it. I mean, it was one of those days where I had gone back and forth on the recording a couple of times, and I was so fucking pissed off by the point that I got to recording that bit. I was like, that's the take. I don't give a shit if it's wrong. I'll just apologize to him afterwards.
It's close enough. I mean,
Yeah, they'll know. We'll talk about it
yeah,
enough on the podcast. But are you guys going to be playing any shows, going on tour? What's the plans post release?
I don't know yet. We do want to get some shows kind of lined out for the summer. That's always tricky for us just because we have to schedule it around like, multiple things, like we have kids and shit like that. But yes, we do want to play some shows this summer, promote the record a little bit doing that. Touring, probably not very, to be perfectly honest. Just with, again, work and family life amongst the three of us. I'm never say never, but like more than 2 or 3 days in a go, probably unlikely.
Yeah,
But
I
you
mean,
never.
you guys only have a very short, a very limited number of holidays that you get in the US as well, right?
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of based around that, and then just you have your family vacations and everything else you're trying to get in there. So, but we do want to play some more shows. Hopefully, we get out there. I feel bad because Christian from Necrofires hit me up a couple times wanting to play with them, and I feel like a dick because I've had to turn them down just because if it doesn't line up, it we can't do it. But I'm hoping to right that ship, and maybe we can make that happen this summer with them,
Well,
or
dude,
just
that
in
that
general.
new Necrofire record is sounding. I've heard the whole thing. It's very spicy. It's a fucking great record.
They're fucking great. I have
Yeah.
no doubt. I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah. No, you guys would be a perfect. You guys would be a perfect like double act on any bill. I think.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. It's just fun to play with bands that you like. So you get to see them for free.
Yeah. that is true. All right, my brother. Well, thank you very, very much. I'm going to apologize to you once again. I know I coughed and sputtered my way through this this conversation. I did have the Benylin and all of the other bullshit before we came on, but I'll next time we speak, hopefully the plague would have left me. But great finally talking to you. Thank you so much again for coming on the podcast and giving me your time. Look forward to hopefully helping drive some more interest in the record when it comes out, because I really do think it's sensational. I think people are going to love it. I can already see just from the feedback that people gave for the single that people are really into it and they're really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's been really awesome, and I just appreciate you having me on here again. Enjoying the show, and now just being able to have this conversation, and especially about the records, has been really great, man. So I appreciate your time and you doing that.
We will do it again, mate, for sure. All right, take care.
Take it.
That was In Seas of Perdition by Krigsgrav off their upcoming record Fires in the Fall, which will be available on June the 23rd through Wiseblood Records. Big apologies to the band because I flubbed the release date when I debuted that single. It's actually a week earlier than I initially suggested, but make sure that you mark it in your calendars if you enjoyed that song, because the rest of the record is absolutely on a par. Likewise, thank you very much to Justin for coming on the show. I dare say that will be the first of multiple appearances from him on the podcast. I had a blast talking to him, and I hope that you guys had a blast listening to that. Now I want to talk about some new music, specifically the new Sól Án Varma record. Now, Sól Án Varma, for those of you that don't know, was a project originally commissioned for the 2018 Roadburn Festival. It features a core duo of T.I. and DG of the band Mysterium, and I believe that once they were locked in place, they started drafting in members of other Icelandic black metal bands to round out this elite unit of necro soldiers that then performed what was intended to be, I believe, a one-off set at Roadburn in 2018. But so much did they enjoy the experience that plans were put in motion soon thereafter to write and kind of put together this full-length record. Now, April was, by all accounts, an absolutely phenomenal month for Icelandic black metal. Of course, there was the debut by Altari, which I spoke about on the podcast at length. I also had Oscar from Altari on the show doing a track-by-track breakdown of it, and the Altari record I branded as one of the very best of the year to date. Now, it turns out that Iceland was going to be responsible for no less than two of the very best black metal releases of the year to date, because Sól Án Varma is almost certainly that. The end result sounds very much like you would expect it to, based on the pedigree of the musicians that are involved. And I mean that in the absolute best possible way. Now, there are 12 tracks across 70 minutes on this record, and I say 12 tracks, but it's really positioned as 12 different movements that form part of a singular work. So what that affords the band is an opportunity to kind of build up, a lot of different ideas over, a period of time, and take you on a journey. And it really does feel like a journey. I kept on coming back to another one of my favorite all-time records when I was listening to this album, that being Exuvia by the Ruins of Beverast. That record has this sense that when you finish it, when you treat it like an end-to-end listening experience and you come to the end, you really do feel like you've been on this very personal, very spiritual journey, and I get the same vibes from Sól Án Varma's record. It's this intense journey that you just kind of want to jump straight back into when you're done. And part of the reason I held off doing a review of this record was because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being sucked into the hype, so to speak, and that it genuinely was something that had, that was going to leave not just a good first impression on me, but a good lasting impression, and that is certainly the case. Now, some of the things that I admire most about this record, if you go to the first song as an example, it starts off with this really kind of foreboding, feedback-drenched, blackened doom riff that just keeps building and building and building in intensity until you get to the nearly 3-minute mark, and it all gets interrupted by this really cool, dark, somber atmospheric break. Later on in the record, the band kind of go almost to My Dying Bride territory, like, songs off of Songs of Darkness, Words of Light come to mind, through some of the riffs that they use. And then right as you start to get kind of comfortable with what they're presenting you with, they'll immediately shift gears and go into something that's, faster, more aggressive, black metal that hits like a fucking 18-wheeler that is running on jet fuel. But all of the performances are absolutely superb. I think the vocals are particularly brilliant, really creative, really different. The sum of the whole is definitely greater than its parts, and it feels like it feels like the sort of record that you're going to be listening to in 2 years from now and still be picking out stuff that maybe you didn't hear before. So, it should come as no surprise that this absolutely earns the pedigree of top-notch in my book. I think that it is absolutely extraordinary, and I could not recommend it more highly if I tried. So, for those of you that want proof to go with my words, you're about to get that right now. Of Brigoi number 9, the ninth movement on the debut record by Sól Án Varma. The album is available right now on Van Records. Ironic that Van Records should also have been the label that released Exuvia by Ruins of Everest, the other record that I kept referring to over the course of that review. No coincidence there. There's clearly something good going on in the quality assurance department over at Van Records. So support them, support Sól Án Varma. I'll post the link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. And if you head over there and buy yourself anything, then do let them know who sent you. Right now, my friends, if you believe that Rage Against the Machine's Tom Morello is one of the leading intellectuals of our time, then it's time for you to get to stepping, because this is my weekly news rant. Beginning our odyssey, as always, on Metal Storm, the first headline I want to talk about, Tanner Tenort have inked a deal with Deborah Morty Productions. Normally, I wouldn't announce any band signing to a record label, but it's Deborah Morty. They have a roster that I think is at least 70% top-notch. So it is worth talking about. I've never heard of Tanner Tenort, but it says here, Polish-based deep space black metal project Tanner Tenort, founded and led by Ija Ryzen, has joined forces with French label Deborah Morty Productions. The band is currently working on new material for the second album, as well as giving final form to a forthcoming compilation entitled Death Sailor. Ryzen explains what to expect from the project's new material. It says here the project promises to push the frontiers of the genre by any means suitable. After the long-pursued tribute to space black metal as it was, the field of possibilities for further stylistic amalgamates opens up wide, notably the incorporation of full-fledged psychedelic electronic music and liminal ambient elements. That sounds to me like something that I would definitely be interested in, but here's a thought, because I know the folks from Deborah Morty listen to this, and I also know that Katie Irizarry listens to this. Now, some of you will know Katie is starting her own PR agency, Suspiria PR, which I'm fully in support of. She's already got artists like Black Braid on her roster. She's working with Inferno Festival, with Beyond the Gates. I've always felt that Deborah Morty Productions lack a little something when it comes to PR. And obviously, a lot of their bands, especially the more established bands like Bluthaus Nord, Eclipse, their reputation kind of sells them for them. But there's a bunch of bands on that label that really could use the expertise of a top-notch PR professional. Probably, in my view, the best PR professional in all of the music industry. So here's an idea, because again, as I said, I know both of them listen to it. How about the two of you meet and build a bridge? And you can thank me for it later. So, anyway, Tanner Tenort, I will look forward to hearing that record when it comes out, as I generally do every single thing that the folks from Deborah Morty do. Next up, we've got exciting news for our friends in North America. Motionless in Shite have announced their North American touring plan. More excitingly, Johnny the Boy have unveiled a new track. The track is called Drew. Now, I spoke about this album a couple of weeks ago. I have had it for a while now, and I'll tell you this much. It is absolutely fucking brilliant. Definitely not what I expected when I saw the name of the band. When I saw Johnny the Boy, I'm going to be honest, I ignored the email that had the promo in it until the legendary Quentin Farrow dropped me a note and said, have you heard this yet? And I went back, listened to it straight away. Just fucking brilliant. So I know the song, but time for you guys to hear the song if you haven't done so already. Let's just read the article very quickly. It says here, sludge post black metal machine from the United Kingdom, Johnny the Boy, present new song Drew as part of their forthcoming debut album You, which will be set free on June the 9th, 2023 through Season of Mist. Without any further ado, folks, let's hit it. So, a couple of things that this reminds me of. Firstly, I Motorhead / High on Fire kind of vibes in there. And that's obviously kind of given a lick of black metal. And then, for anybody that doesn't know, Johnny the Boy is basically everybody from Crippled Black Phoenix, just doing something different. But as far as I know, the seeds for this project were first sown on, I think, the second to last Crippled Black Phoenix record. I like that band very much as well. So I think it's good for them to have this outlet where they can do some of these heavier songs and then kind of leave the prog experimental stuff for Crippled Black Phoenix. But just to me, it just works on every level. And the great thing about this album is, much like the average Crippled Black Phoenix record, it goes through so many different moods and atmospheres and ideas, but it binds it all together in a way that's very cohesive, and that is very memorable. And the other thing that I think is standing out on this song is, I know Belinda Kordick, I believe, is the vocalist that's handling most of the vocals. She can, and she does have a really beautiful singing voice, but she clearly got some fucking serious black metal pipes as well. So kudos to her. I think that sounds just fucking. That performance is just absolutely fantastic. So I mean, so far so good. We'll get back to it in a second, but. If this kind of Motorhead style isn't to your liking, just let me say this too. The whole album doesn't sound like this. Every single song on this record sounds very distinct, very different. But I think this is very cool. Very, very, very catchy as well, which I like. I just double checked now. It is indeed Belinda Kordick, and then also Justin Greaves of Crippled Black Phoenix, and then Matt Crawford, who used to be in Crippled Black Phoenix. He's in the band as well, playing bass. But sensational stuff in my opinion. And take my word for it, when this record comes out, you are most definitely going to want to pay a whole lot of attention. It is fantastic. All right, so next up we've got Pale Horse out of Finland. I've never heard of them before, but it says here, Finland's Pale Horse are back with a heavy new track and a music video for Unravel. They are concurrently announcing the release of a brand new studio album due out later this year, recorded by Lassi Makikala, mixed by Jyrka Perala, mastered by Tony Lindgren. Additional album details will be unveiled in the following weeks. Like I said, never heard of Pale Horse before, but I will say this. Divenial Verdict, we've had a couple of bands come through from Finland recently that suggests to me that there's a renaissance going on in that country when it comes to extreme metal. So let's see if Pale Horse can add themselves to this growing list of just really, really, really impressive new talent coming out of that country. So I'm a little confused by this song because there's like a couple of moments where I'm thinking new metal. And then there's a couple of moments where, it sounds like hardcore. There's a couple of moments where, you almost kind of get this sort of sludge, almost bordering sometimes on deathcore vibe. So it feels to me like there's an awful lot going on here. Interestingly, Finn McKenty, who has a very popular YouTube channel, I'm sure all of you guys know him, he did a piece recently on new metal making a comeback, and apparently, according to Google Analytics, search results for new metal are at an all-time high, or at the highest it's been since 2004. So, or actually search queries, I should say. So clearly, a lot of people are, getting back into Korn and Limp Bizkit and whatnot. I would hope that the fashion sense doesn't follow suit. But I mean, whilst this definitely doesn't sound like, you wouldn't call this new metal. But then a part of me also thinks to myself, is this what it could morph into over time? I don't know. Folks that grew up listening to bands like Spine Shank and Korn and stuff like that, then getting into heavier music and going, well, we're going to do our own thing, but we're going to bring some of those elements that we liked from those bands in there. I don't hate it. I genuinely don't. I think everything works really well, even though it's stylistically, it's, at least on the face of it, it's all over the place. But I don't hate it at all. I like the clean vocals. I like the heavier parts. I think the production is cool. Let's get back to it. I'll tell you something as well. When this band finds their audience, I reckon they could be massive. There's definitely, I can hear a lot of this doing really, really well with a wider audience than necessarily the stuff that we usually like and listen to on this podcast and on this segment. But I like it. Rock on, Pale Horse, rock on. So I think it's very interesting. I think it's unique. And as I said, not hating that whatsoever. Okay, let's move on. Next up, we've got another Finnish band, Church of the Dead. So Church of the Dead, it says here, Finnish purveyors of death metal, Church of the Dead will release their new long player Beyond Death on May the 26th. The 4-piece is now streaming their slow-burning new advanced single, Christborn. The accompanying music video was shot and edited by Juicy Salamainen. Again, no idea what Church of the Dead sounds like. But like I said, we're in the midst of a Finnish groundswell, so let's hear what Christborn sounds like. God damn, that is fucking excellent. I'm telling you what, 2023 is becoming a very, very exciting year for death metal. Obviously, we've had Nightmare. I've played a couple of their songs on the news rant. That sounds super promising. There's been Angerot, Church of the Dead. We know there's definitely a new Werewolves record coming out this year. And there's probably a bunch of others that I can't remember off the top of my head. But that sounds fucking brilliant. Definitely very strong ulcerate vibes there, which is not a bad thing. That vocalist sounds like a fucking bear. I love that riff, that melodic riff that they have, kind of starting the song off, and then they continue that motif through the track when it starts getting heavier and it starts getting faster. And I like the fact that they're very economical with the way they're using speed. So it when the song did get faster, it didn't feel to me like it was forced. It's one of the things that I despise when it comes to a lot of black and death metal bands is when they throw in a blast beat and it feels to me like they threw it in just for the sake of doing so. It just feels like it's a natural segue into that, and then when it slows down again, it's really effective. So every sequence of the song feels like it has the intended impact. Good production. Man, that is fucking impressive. Really, really, really enjoying that. Let's give it another 30 seconds. I'll tell you what, get these guys, Ulcerate and Nightmare, out on tour, and then basically just call it one of the best death metal touring packages of the last 20 years. This is fucking brilliant. Definitely a lot of black metal influence there as well. I mean, there's no getting around that. I know they call themselves death metal, but this isn't straightforward death metal. But I prefer that. And I like the fact that the two genres have been, very, there's been a lot of blurring of the lines, a lot of sharing of ideas and aesthetics. But Beyond Death, definitely on the calendar of records that I'm looking forward to. That is out on May the 26th, and as I said, it is fucking fantastic. All right, Enforced have got a new music video for War Remains. Not going to listen to that, but just to acknowledge that everybody seems to be raving about this record. They were 1 for 1 in my view. We listened to 2 singles on the news rant. I like the first one. Second one I didn't care for very much. So I have yet to properly listen to the record, but I will do so at some point. Craving, sharing a new single. It says here, Craving's new single, Gods Don't Negotiate. That's a fucking cool name for a song. It says it's out now. The song, which appears on the band's oncoming record, Call of the Sirens, features a guitar solo by Marek Ashok Smerda of Cradle of Filth. I don't know what label these guys are on. I quite like the album cover, though. And like I said, what a fucking cool name for a song. So that actually no, it seems like they're on Massacre Records. Sorry, I take that back. So regardless of all of that malarkey, let's hear what it sounds like. It's not bad. I mean, they're certainly playing with a lot of conviction. The like everything that should be in place is in place here. I mean, and I say that musically speaking because if you're watching this on YouTube, tell me whether you agree or not, but that music video so far fucking sucks. It's typical, black and white metal band playing their instruments in the forest, but then in between there seems to be some sort of narrative of two nerds walking together and laughing and giggling in the forest. And I'm assuming I'll jump ahead I'll jump to like minute 4. I'm assuming at some point things go awry, predictably, and one of them is dead and the other is still alive. Who fucking knows? But yeah, I think the song title probably got me more excited for what I was about to hear than the actual music has. It's not bad. Maybe it's recency bias because it was going to have to be something absolutely stunning to take my mind away from the brilliance that we just heard off that Church of the Dead track. But anyway, 4 minutes in, let's see what's happened in the story and let's hear what's going on with the song. This part I quite like. I think the melody is cool. I like the vibe of it. It's obviously built up to something. Visually, what it's built up to, as we can see from the music video, one of the two giggling ninnies has killed his mate in the forest and is now making his escape in that most necro of automobile, the Peugeot station wagon. So, I have to say, no offense to folks that drive station wagons. I often, when I'm on the highway, I look at folks that are in them. I would not be caught fucking dead in one. To me, driving a station wagon, I understand the convenience of it, but it signifies surrender to your age. I will never do it. So, anyway, moving on. 200 Stab Wounds have released a new track, Fatal Reality. There's a huge amount of hoopla about this band especially on Twitter for whatever reason. And I've got to say, I am lost as to why people like them so much. They're not bad, but if I think about, they kind of fall into that same camp as Undeath. I'm trying to think, Gatecreeper. Of those 3 bands, I would say they're probably number 3. And I think we could probably start adding, if I racked my brains, I could probably start adding other bands, and they're going to probably, 200 Stab Wounds would consistently stay at the bottom of the rankings. Yeah, like I said, they're not bad, but they're a 6 out of 10 band to me, based on everything I've heard so far. However, we've seen many a come to Jesus or come to Satan moment on this podcast, and particularly on this segment. So let's see if there can be one on this, or in this instance. So it says here, being released on April the 28th digitally and as a 7-inch, 200 Stab Wounds' new EP, Masters of Morbidity, contains 2 tracks, including the title track that was originally released as a digital single on November the 11th, 2022, and the new track, Fatal Reality, both of which were produced by the great Mark Lewis. 200 Stab Wounds commented, Masters of Morbidity marks a whole new level for us as a band, having fun writing and being open to incorporating some different things into our music that maybe we wouldn't have done a year or 2 ago. We're very happy with what we've put together and can't wait to get more out to the masses. See you out on the road. Now, actually, he mentioned something there that gets my gears turning. Maybe the love that this band gets is because of the way that they play live, and I fully concede there are certain bands in our scene where you really do, in order to truly appreciate them and like what they do, you definitely have to see them live. I've never seen 200 Stab Wounds live. Could well be that their live shows are the best thing under the sun. I was never as big of a fan of Power Trip, frankly, until I saw them live. And I also wasn't as, I never got the hype around Municipal Waste until I saw them live. So just going to throw that out there. But let's hear if musically Fatal Reality has enough in the tank to convince me. So far, up until the point that it went into that mid-tempo gallop, everything leading up to there, that's 0 out of 10 in my view. The dun 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 dun. I mean, for fuck's sake, how many bands have to write riffs like that before we just retire that idea altogether? So that's just no good. The vocals sound okay. I mean, it sounds like he's cursing on every second word. You know, I can't exactly talk. I curse on every second word that I say on the news rant. But it just sounds like that way of doing it. It just sounds, I don't know, trite. It sounds childish. And then the drums dull as well, up until the point that they went into that mid-tempo gallop. Now, song might change there, and that's why we'll go back to it in a second. But up to this point, again, the hype around this band is entirely lost on me. Guitar solo is okay, that mid-tempo bit is okay, but I'm honestly, at its best, there are at least 20 bands that I can reel off to you right now that you should go and listen to instead of listening to this band, if you are in the mood for this kind of music. So, yeah, like I said, it might be their live shows that are the saving grace, but that song stinks. Let's move on. Next up, we've got Coleman of Texas confirmed drummer Kevin Paredes for upcoming tours. Progressive metal outfit Texas are revealing that drummer Kevin Paredes of Benighted will be performing drums during the band's upcoming headlining tours. That's quite a get, and that Benighted drummer is he knows his way around a drum kit. What else have we got, folks? News about a new Avatar song. I actually, you know, when you're listening to music on Qobuz or Spotify or whatever, and it skips over to, or it ends the record, and you know, it kind of plays you a song that has been given it in the algorithm. I love Qobuz, but their algorithm leaves much to be desired. I was listening to something like Emperor or Burzum or something the other day, and for some bizarre reason, Avatar is the song that it jumps to straight off to the album. And that was the first time I ever heard them, and I knew at that point that I was listening to the biggest load of fucking trash that I have heard in a long time. Black Braid, second album detailed, indigenous black metal solo project Black Braid, who released a very well-received debut album Black Braid 1 last year, now announced an official release of its successor entitled Black Braid 2. It'll be released independently across all major platforms on July 7th, 2023. The first single, Moss-Covered Bones on the Altar of the Moon, arrives next Wednesday via Black Metal Promotions' YouTube page and on all major streaming services next Friday. Enjoyed that Black Braid debut record. I may see if I can try and get him on the podcast, because he is now also being... he's being supported by Katie through her Suspiria PR company, so it may be that I'm able to get him on the show. Anyways, Vexed have got a new sophomore record out in June. We've also got Haggard. I mean, what's going on here? Where the bangers at? I'm trying to see. Unblessed Divine. So, for folks that may have forgotten, I've had Lee Vollenschlager on the podcast a couple of times. Lee and I go way, way back. Like, I first met him when I was, I think, 12 years old. He, of course, was vocalist and guitarist for Malevolent Creation, and then that didn't work out, so he's joined up with a couple of folks and started Unblessed Divine. Now, I've actually heard this record. I can tell you now it's very, very good. And I'll certainly have him on the show to talk about the album nearer its release. But it says here, August 18th, 2023 has been set as the official release day for Unblessed Divine's debut long player entitled Portal to Darkness. Massacre Records will handle the release in several formats. If I had to describe it, I would say it reminds me a bit of Morbid Angel meets the Amenta. So if that sort of thing makes you quiver with excitement, then get ready to be happy, because I think you are going to thoroughly enjoy the record. Next up, we've got Sisyphean. So it says here, just ahead of their appearance at the Transcending Obscurity Fest, Lithuanian black metal band Sisyphean have released an official video of their new single, Through Corrosion. It was mixed and mastered by Dovides Auglis. I have never heard of Sisyphean before, but it's Transcending Obscurity Records, and they generally always pique my interest. So let's hit it. I let that one run a little bit longer. Actually, I didn't even realize that I was just interested in what I was hearing. It kind of starts off, I know it's a production thing more than it's anything else, but it almost starts a little bit thin. But then when the song actually kicks off properly, that is very, very good. Really cool riffing, really interesting use of melody. I mean, it doesn't sound on the surface like something that we've not heard before, but I do think it's the band have managed to put like a little bit of their own spin on it. A little bit like when you listen to bands out of Australia. I've said this many times before. You think of like the Straight Line as sort of the average sounding band, or I guess the through line in a particular genre. They always seem to do something that's just a little bit off kilter, and I would say this kind of has a similar vibe, but in a different way, right? So I'm liking it. The only negative that I see there is I think the vocals they're not bad, but they are not on a par with the rest of what's going on. The rest of what's going on is very, very, very good. The vocals are merely good. Maybe that's the best way I can describe it. And I'll tell you one thing that might be interesting is hearing what it would sound like if the vocalist sung all of his lyrics in his native tongue, because I feel like he's the way he's phrasing his vocals there, and it's no slight on him or anything like that, but the way that he's phrasing his vocals, the rhythm that he's putting into his vocals, it's clear that English isn't his first language. And a little bit like what you get with the French bands or the Polish bands, maybe it would be better if he stuck to his native tongue, and sang all of the lyrics and that, like that, because maybe he'd have more of a natural sense of rhythm. The rhythm, I think, is the issue with the vocals. It sounds a little bit broken, and just not quite letting those riffs kind of come out at you like the way they otherwise would. But I as I said, I let it run 37 seconds longer than my usual 1 minute allotment, so clearly I'm enjoying it. And that is fucking stunning. I mean, that just, I love those build-ups. I love that to me is payoff. Like, there's a lot of, I think Satyr actually Satyr von Graven might have spoken about this once, where, like, he was talking about Satyricon back when they still knew how to write music, and he was talking about how he writes a song, and, you have these long sequences, and then you have like a payoff where you have this really big hook that you throw at the listener. That's a fucking spectacular example of that. Yeah, I like that a lot, and I hopefully I didn't come across as too harsh on the vocals. They're not bad, as I said, but I just think that I think they could take a step up, and maybe they figure that out on their next album. Who knows? But so far, I like what I heard. All right, we'll do one more, and then we'll head over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. Death Collector have released Mental Hedonist as their new single. It says it's the second single from their forthcoming debut record, Death's Toll. It's going to be released on Prosthetic Records on June the 23rd. No idea what Death Collector sounds like, but generally speaking, Prosthetic Records put out some good stuff. They've obviously put out Werewolves, which immediately puts them in my good books. So let's hear what Death Collector sounds like. This is pretty unremarkable. I was just having a quick gander on my phone now while the song was playing. This band is from the UK. As I said, there's nothing bad about it, but there's nothing particularly exciting about it either, in my view. Decent vocals, riff sounds alright, drums sound alright. Again, maybe that Sisyphean or the some of the other songs that we listened to, meant that my standards were going to be a little bit raised. You get that recency bias that creeps in. But frankly, I think if I'd listened to Silence for the last week and somebody played me this, would I be particularly excited about it? I'm not sure. So that's my thoughts on that. That's a 5.5 out of 10 track. Next up, we've got Judas Priest's Richie Faulkner on his lifestyle changes following heart surgery. He says, I have to watch how many greens I eat. Judas Priest guitarist Richie Faulkner has once again opened up about the life-saving surgery he underwent a year and a half ago. On September 26, 2021, the now 43-year-old British-born musician suffered an acute cardiac aortic dissection During a performance at the Louder Than Life Festival, just a short distance from the Rudd Heart and Lung Center at University of Louisville Health. It took the hospital's cardiotherapeutic surgery team, led by Dr. Siddharth Pawar, and also including Doctors Brian Gansel and Mark Slaughter, approximately 10 hours to complete the surgery, an aortic valve and ascending aorta replacement with hemiarch replacement. So, I'm no doctor, so I don't know what the fuck they're on about. I just know he had heart disease, and that was, at his age to have to go through a procedure like that, that definitely feels like it's premature to me. Anyway, so he says, yeah, I'm very lucky. I keep saying it. I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate. It's medication for the rest of my life, and I have to watch how many greens I eat, funnily enough, because my heart's fine. I have to watch how thick my blood is. I've got a mechanical valve, so it means I have to make sure that my blood is thin enough to go through the valve, but not too thin that I bleed out if I cut myself. So eating greens thickens your blood because of the vitamin K in it. So that's the stuff I've got to be careful of, crazy enough. You'll find a host of militant vegans ready to differ with you on that topic, Mr. Faulkner, but I'm certainly glad that he's on the mend. And yeah, man, that is wild that somebody could go through something like that at that age. Next up, we've got Lars Ulrich saying that he doesn't know if everybody understands what Metallica is doing with the no-repeat weekend concept. So, in a new interview with Japanese music critic and radio personality Masa Ito of TVK's Rock City, Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich spoke about the band's M72 World Tour, which will feature 2-night stops in nearly 24 cities, presented worldwide by Liquid Death and Blackened American Whiskey, and promoted by Live Nation. The 46-show trek, launched in Amsterdam on April the 27th, will include shows all over Europe and North America through 2024. Each no-repeat weekend on M72 will feature 2 completely different set lists and support lineups. Regarding the prospect of playing 2 different sets in every city, Lars said, "It's definitely exciting, definitely a little crazy, but it's fun-spirited and, of course, a little overwhelming, to be honest with you." The concept was born out of a gentleman named Danny Wimmer, who runs a series of festivals in America, and I guess about 4 years ago now, he came to us and asked if we would play 6 or 8 of his festivals, and we would bookend the festival. We would play Friday and Sunday, and somebody else would play Saturday, and we would play Friday and Sunday, completely different sets, and bookend the festival. That sounded interesting, unique, and crazy cool, so we said yes. And we had 6, 7, maybe 8 of those scheduled for 2020. Then the pandemic and lockdown came, and obviously that all went away. By the time we circled into the fall of 21, we went out and did 3 of those. It was fun, we survived it, and it felt like it connected with an audience. And for us, it was an opportunity to do a kind of blank canvas experiment of just starting completely over, which is always fun and appreciated in the Metallica camp. So when we were trying to figure out the next record, we thought this concept of going around the world and playing 2 nights in every city and doing this would be fun. I do think it's a cool idea. Although I would say if I paid money to see Metallica and they didn't play Seek and Destroy, they're on the shit list. No 2 ways about it. So that would be obviously a prerequisite, and I know it's actually a prerequisite that they've not fulfilled, because I've looked at some of the set lists they've done recently. But as artists, I can definitely see why they would do that. Playing the same songs every single night, I think would drive you fucking insane. And they're in a position where people are going to come and watch them regardless. Plus, it makes it a bit more unpredictable, because, I mean, even I've done this. You'll be at a show and you'll take your phone out and look at setlist.com, and you'll see, where in the show are we, what's coming up next. And really, that kind of takes you out of it. It takes you out of the moment. And it's better to just enjoy it for what it is. Wait for what comes next. Enjoy the unpredictability. So I get where they're coming from. One side beef that I have with them, though, is that once again, if we look at this this tour they're on, they are not taking with them any young up-and-coming bands, that they themselves could give the rub to. So I know Pantera are playing a couple of dates with them, but then they've got Mammoth, fucking MVH, whatever the hell his name is, that kid, Eddie, the late Eddie Van Halen's crotch spawn. They've got Floor Jansen from Nightwish. I mean, come on. There are so many bands that these guys could take out on the road with them. Introduced to a whole new generation in the same way that Ozzy Osbourne did them, and they just don't seem to have an appetite for doing it, and I think that's a real shame. And I also think the reason I take such issue with it is because, they received those opportunities when they were up and coming. They have said many times that there was a game changer for them, and yet bands like trying to think of a good band. I mean, Enforced would be a decent one to say. I'm trying to think who else, like of the young up and comers. You wouldn't be able to take out a black or death metal band. Like, I concede you're not going to be able to do that. But I mean, I would say even a band like Testament would be fucking awesome to have out with them. High on Fire. Take out bands like that, bands that have been going for a long time, but really would benefit greatly from getting that, getting that greater exposure. Crowbar, take them out with you. You can really go out on a limb and take Goator out with you. But anything is better than fucking Mammoth, MVH, and Floor Jensen. I mean, I would make the argument that a very significant chunk of people that are there actively dislike those bands, and the rest of them just don't give a shit. So even if you just think about it from like the audience's perspective, what are they going to enjoy the most? The bands I just listed, or the shit bands that are on with them right now? Anyway, let's move on. Devin Townsend says, learning to fail efficiently is a huge part of success. In a new interview with Framus and Warwick, Canadian singer, songwriter, and producer Devin Townsend, who has spent his entire career making unique inroads with many styles of music, always following his particular muse in any way it leads him for almost 3 decades, spoke about the link between mental health and music, and how being an introvert has informed his art. I've been open about certain struggles that I've had in terms of my psychology over the years. Mental health, he said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net. And I hope that by being open about it and also learning from mistakes that I may have made in the past that put me in the position where some of the behaviors that I had exhibited were interpreted as being more indicative of mental illness rather than poor behavior on my part. And I guess I hope that I have for moving forward and doing the work that I do is that learning to fail efficiently is a huge part of success. I think what typically can happen is if people have made a mistake, or if they've done something that was embarrassing, or they've done something that they found humiliating, the tendency is often to just stop and give up in a way. But for me, I went through a bunch of things when I was younger, be it with drugs or with alcohol or just arrogance on my part, that allowed me to exhibit behaviors that were inappropriate publicly. And my hope is that by showing people the process that I employ on a musical level that has yielded a lot of growth throughout the years, then maybe they will see their own potential misgivings as being something that's not like a final definition of who they are. I can relate to that without a shadow of a doubt. I've spoken about it on the podcast quite openly, but I've certainly failed. I wouldn't call it efficiently. Spectacularly is probably a better word to use. But I failed spectacularly on a number of occasions in my life. Probably the most prominent one, and the example I come back to a lot on the show when I'm talking to guests, occurred in 2015, which was the year that I got divorced, and my dad was going blind. So that caused a lot of stress for me. It caused a lot of stress for my mom. And then on top of that, I took a real knock to my career aspirations, for various reasons. And I got pulled into, a fun but ultimately extremely toxic relationship. And I can tell you all very honestly, the biggest lessons that I learned from that whole experience was, one, I think in reflecting on what's happened when you've gone through a setback like that, I think it's very, very important, albeit it's not very easy, to be brutally honest with yourself about what happened and why it happened, and for you yourself to take ownership and accountability of what went wrong, what were your mistakes. I think the worst thing that you can do is to point the fingers at others or try and find extenuating circumstances when things have gone wrong, because if you do that, invariably you're never going to course correct properly, because you're not going to course correct your own behavior. You're just going to go, well, it was external circumstances that were to blame, so my behavior doesn't need to adjust. And that's probably the biggest part of dealing with failures, as far as I'm concerned, because it's the part that takes the longest. And I think then dealing with the consequences of failure, again, I'll speak openly to the legions because I'm always pretty honest with you guys. But I found myself at the start of 2016 in a situation where financially I had, between, financial mismanagement and having, a fair bit of personal debt, but also having to move out and live by myself and pay child maintenance, I only had about 150 to 200 pounds, once all my basic outgoings were done every single month. So, I mean, if you, for anyone who lives in London, 200 pounds a month, and obviously, I had this, when I say basic outgoings, I'm including food, gym, that sort of thing, but 200 pounds a month for spending money is not a lot. So, what you then learn during that time is, as I've mentioned many times, is control the controllable, and I did figure out ways to turn over a penny many times over. You start figuring your way around the coupon system, around discount vouchers, around you very quickly find yourself spotting opportunities to save money that you didn't frankly think existed previously. But even just on a personal level, I really kind of retreated into myself for a good 7 or 8 months, as I worked through all of these things in my mind, as I kind of got used to my new normal, and at the end of it all, as much as it was tough, I learned a huge amount during that time, and I would say the years after that, up to and definitely including meeting Paige, were some of the best of my entire life. And I would even go as far as to say I would never in a million years give up anything from 2015. I would never want to go back and change anything of it, because it played a very, very big role in making me who I am today. But I think part of that, getting back to the original point, is owning your fuck up, being very, very honest with yourself about why it happened and what your role was in making it happen. And then making sure that you have that anchor going forward, and that you're focusing on controlling what you can control, and course correcting your behavior where you need to. And you also, over the, in that time, you find a lot of kind of random things that inspire you. The thing that inspired me most, when times got toughest, was Eastbound and Down, the TV show. And Kenny Powers has a quote on the second season where he says, "If you stay the course long enough, the road might just lead you, or might just show you what you need. All you need to do is keep your eyes on the road and your foot on the fucking gas." And I reminded myself of that almost every single day. And, my life now is substantially better than what it was before. Am I going to make the same mistakes? I sure should hope not. Am I going to make other mistakes? Yes. But I think the other thing is also, don't beat yourself up over mistakes. Just learn from it. Now, the worst thing you can do is make a mistake and not learn from it. Second worst thing you can do is make a mistake and be so hard on yourself about it that, to Devin's point, you just give up entirely. There's no point in that either. All right, we'll do one more and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see what we got. We've got news about Mammoth WVH. No thanks. We've got a new Cradle of Filth song. So it says here, Cradle of Filth shares video for new song Demon Prince Regent. It says here, extreme metal veterans Cradle of Filth, led by frontman Danny Filth, have unleashed a thirst quencher of epic proportions in the form of their first live album to be released in over 20 years, Trouble and Their Double Lives, out today via Napalm Records. In celebration of today's LP release, Cradle of Filth have revealed a brand new live performance music video for one of the 2 studio tracks cut from Trouble and Their Double Lives, titled Demon Prince Regent. I assume this is about Prince Harry. The track slams in with a wall of sound and grim blackened guitar leads before reaching a head-banging, bouncing chorus, proving itself to be a searing follow-up to the band's previous single, She Is a Fire. She Is a Fire, I think, if memory serves me correctly, I didn't mind too much. So, it was the same old outcome that you always find with most Cradle of Filth songs. Music isn't bad. Danny Filth's vocals are nigh on unlistenable. But I know there's many of you who are fans, so I'm willing, because of my love for the Legion, to give this a fair shake. So the opening, probably 40 seconds, 9 out of 10. Then we dip into 5 out of 10 territory. Then we manage to pull back into probably 6.5 to 7 out of 10 territory. But the one constant is that when those shrieking vocals of Danny Filth come in, which sounds like somebody is taking a claw hammer and fucking smashing his testicles with it, it just wrecks the song. And also, that very kind of thin keyboard line over the top, it lacks a degree of impact. It lacks clout. But the song itself isn't bad. Like I said, the opening of the song, I was like, fuck, this is going to be another one of those Dark Funeral Watain moments for me, where I have to eat my words and say that's actually a really, really good tune. We soon went into more typical Cradle of Filth territory. But let's get back to it. I mean, let me say this. When last have I listened to a Cradle of Filth song where 9 out of 10, even for just a sequence, is even a possibility? So that in itself is a surprise. That part we were just listening to right now sounds very good. Is it, as a whole, is it good enough for me to want to bother and go back and listen to any old Cradle of Filth records? Absolutely not. And on that note, my friends, I am wrapping up the news for this week. That does it for me. I will be back next week, joined by Draugluin of Tudor. Like I said, not the most talkative gentleman, but a very sincere, very nice guy. And I definitely would have been remiss not to share the conversation with you guys, especially considering the fact that new Tudor record is the absolute nuts. I hope you guys enjoyed this installment of the show. Make sure that you are back here next week, and I am going to play us out with a song by Samael back in the day when their parents could still have been proud of them. So this is a song of my favorite Samael record, Blood Ritual. The song is called After the Sepulture. My friends, wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you're doing, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you bad motherfuckers again next week.